A man locked in an iron cage should not be picky about who he talks to. And yet, out of an entire caravan of prisoners and orphans heading to the wall, one caged man fixates on a single scrawny boy. Except that boy isn't a boy at all. And the man in the cage isn't just a man. He's a professional killer who has spent his life reading faces for a living. And within days, he's clocked exactly who she really is. That man is Jaqen H'ghar. The boy is Arya Stark. And the question that's bugged readers and viewers for over a decade is simple. Why her? Out of everyone in Westeros, why did a faceless man decide a 9-year-old fugitive was worth the trouble? Today we're breaking that down properly. Not just what happens in the books, but what it actually means, and what the wider mythology of the Faceless Men tells us about the recruitment pitch nobody else in this story ever gets. Let's set the scene. After Ned Stark loses his head, Arya escapes King's Landing disguised as a boy, hair hacked off, face smeared with dirt, and gets folded into a caravan of Night's Watch recruits. To the guards, to the other kids, even to most readers on a first pass, the disguise holds up fine. It does not hold up to Jaqen. Here's the thing people forget. Jaqen was already caged and bound for the wall before Arya ever showed up. He wasn't planted there to find her. He just happens to be sitting in the one cage with a direct line of sight to a girl who is, frankly, terrible at hiding. Think about the tells. She's carrying a sword too well made for a flea-bottom orphan. When she scraps with another boy, she instinctively drops into a bravosy water dancer stance, which is not something street kids pick up by accident. She avoids the latrine at the same time as the other boys. Euron treats her differently than the rest of the group, and everyone notices it, even if they don't know why. And when the caravan gets attacked, she screams "Winterfell" as a battle cry, which is about as subtle as wearing a name tag. To a normal guard, none of this registers. To a man who has trained his entire life to construct false identities and spot the seams in other people's, it's a checklist. By the time Arya frees him from that burning cage weeks later, Jaqen almost certainly already knows she's a highborn girl from a great house on the run. Connecting that to the missing Stark daughter isn't a leap. It's basic arithmetic for a man in his line of work. So the mystery was never really, how did he figure out who she was? The real mystery is what he decided to do about it. Jaqen tells Arya that the Red God demands 3 lives in exchange for the 3 she saved. It sounds like a tidy magical transaction, and a lot of viewers take it at face value. Even Daenerys gets a version of this line elsewhere in the story, when Mirri Maz-Dur tells her that only death can pay for life, right before taking her unborn child. But look closer, and the logic falls apart. Arya didn't save those 3 men on purpose expecting payment. She saved them because a fire was spreading, and leaving them to burn felt monstrous. That's not a transaction. That's a reflex. And notably, Jaqen never enforces the other side of the bargain either. He doesn't tell her she now owes 3 lives back to balance the ledger. The rule only ever applies once, conveniently, in the direction that benefits him. That's not religious bookkeeping. That's a test. Jaqen already suspects Arya has the instincts to be useful to the Faceless Men. What he doesn't know yet is whether she has the stomach for it. So he hands her an absurd amount of power, the ability to have anyone in the world killed, no questions asked, and watches what she does with it. It's less a debt being settled and more an audition being run. And it's worth remembering, the Faceless Men aren't missionaries. They don't recruit the way a cult recruits on a street corner. They let people worship whoever they want. The only thing they actively pursue is talent, because the order only survives if new members keep replacing the old ones. Jaqen isn't paying off a favor here. He's scouting that here's a detail that gets skipped past way too often. In the books, Jaqen doesn't just randomly decide to ask Arya for a third name. He wakes her up moments after she's finished reciting her infamous list, the string of names of everyone she wants dead, which she says out loud like a bedtime prayer before sleep. She doesn't call a kill list. She calls a prayer. Now hold that next to the actual origin story of the Faceless Men, which the books eventually spell out. Long before Braavos existed, the first Faceless Man was a slave in the mines of Valyria. He heard other slaves crying out, begging any god who'd listen to end their suffering. And he answered. Later, he heard a different kind of prayer, one begging for a slave master's death, and he answered that one too, in exchange for a lifetime of service. That's the entire founding myth of the Order. Someone in desperate need whispers a prayer for death, and someone answers it. So when Jaqen overhears a traumatized child muttering a list of names like a ritual before bed, ending it with the Bravosi phrase, "For all men must die," it's not just creepy. To him, it's practically scripture repeating itself. He's not offering Arya a business deal. He's answering a prayer, exactly the way the very first Faceless Man did. And when she rattles off 3 names without flinching, when she even turns down the chance to have Joffrey himself killed because she's saving that name for something else, she's not just passing a test. She's proving she already thinks like one of them. Strip away the mystery, and the pattern becomes obvious. By the time Jaqen makes his move, Arya has already lived as at least 3 different people: a Stark, a street orphan named Aerie, and a servant girl named Weasel at Harrenhal. She's doing the core job of a faceless man, discarding identities and building new ones without any training at all. She's also, and this matters, completely alone. No family looking for her. No one back home who even knows where she is. That's not a small detail to an organization built entirely around people vanishing and becoming nobody. There's nothing to sever because everything's already been severed for her. And there's a parallel that rarely gets pointed out. The waif, the other acolyte Arya trains alongside in Bravos, comes from a strikingly similar background: a noble family, a young loss of a parent, and circumstances that left her easy to fold into the Order. Jaqen may well be looking at Arya and seeing a familiar shape, a child shaped by grief into someone useful. Put it all together: clever, combative, a natural at disguise, fixated on death, traumatized at exactly the age where identity is still soft enough to reshape, and crucially, invisible to the world, someone nobody would come looking for if she disappeared into Bravos for good. That's not a checklist a random killer stumbles into by accident. That's the exact profile a recruiter goes looking for. Now here's where it gets genuinely interesting, because this is where the mystery goes beyond just Arya. Even the actor who played Jaqen has said, publicly, that he doesn't fully know his own character's plan. Tom Laska has talked about how it was never explained why Jaqen ended up in those black cells in the first place, or what mission put him there before Arya ever entered the picture. His own read on it was that it wasn't a coincidence, that something bigger was already in motion. And fans have spent years trying to fill that gap. Some point out that the Faceless Men are heavily inspired by a real historical group, the Hashishin, a secretive medieval order of trained killers operating out of Persia, which gives the whole guild a grounding in actual history rather than pure fantasy. Others have floated theories that Jaqen was hired to go after Daenerys, or that he was quietly settling a contract inside King's Landing itself, something that went sideways and landed him in a cell. There's even a fan theory that Jaqen and Arya's original sword teacher, Syrio Farrell, whose death we conveniently never see on screen, might be the very same person wearing 2 different faces. None of these are confirmed. That's kind of the point. The show simply never answers why a trained assassin capable of walking anywhere unnoticed chose to get arrested. But it does track with something readers already know. The Faceless Men rarely do anything without a reason, and coincidence isn't really a concept they seem to believe in. There's also an uncomfortable thread hanging over Arya's future that the show skipped entirely. In the most recent wins of winter chapters Martin has released, Arya breaks the Order's core rule. She kills a man off the books, on her own initiative, without sanction from the many-faced god. For an organization built entirely around the idea that death is only ever delivered as a gift, never as personal revenge, that's not a small violation. It's the kind of thing an order like this typically doesn't let slide. Whether that debt ever comes due is still unwritten, but it reframes everything Jaqen said in motion back at Harrenhal. He wasn't just opening a door for Arya. He may have been setting up a debt she hasn't finished paying. Why, E.T.'d? Why did Jaqen recruit Arya? Not because of pity, and not because of some rigid rule about lives owed. He recruited her because she was, by every measure that matters to the Faceless Men, Exactly what they were looking for. Sharp, fearless, already halfway to becoming someone else, and utterly alone in a way that made her disappearance cost the world nothing. What he couldn't have predicted is that the same qualities that made her the perfect recruit are the exact same ones that eventually made her walk right back out the door. If you want the next part of this breakdown, covering what actually happens once Arya reaches the House of Black and White, and what the Order really wanted from her beyond just making another faceless killer, let me know in the comments and I'll get that one out next. And if theories like the Jaqen in the Black Cells mystery are the kind of rabbit hole you enjoy falling down, there's a lot more of this waiting in the rest of the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.